Megyn Kelly comes clean about how Moderna went after her for telling the truth about how the vaccine affected her health. Plus, new polling shows that Donald Trump is given big trouble for little Joe Biden on the electoral map. Plus, if you're an illegal immigrant in this country, we're told that you've got a real tough road ahead of you. But if you're an illegal immigrant and you're gay, it's smooth sailing with jazz hands. All coming up right now. Hey, it's Larry O'Connor. Please call me Larry, and please like and subscribe to all the videos wherever you're watching them right now so you can get an alert. Because listen, I'm not going to lie. I don't know if YouTube really wants us to stick around here much longer, but if you put the alert on, you'll know before they know that we put up a video or something like that. The number one topic in this country is the border security. We mentioned yesterday how Joe Biden is really insistent on getting a new law passed so he can secure the border. The very same border that he and his administration have been saying is already secure. Still having trouble figuring that one out. But now we've got a whole lot more information about what happens to illegal aliens in this country. Jesse Waters is going to tell you exactly what's in store for you if you're illegal, if you've crossed the border, and you're gay.
Now, if Biden actually wants to shut down the border, why is he trying to snip Texas razor wire? There's no wire in California, and migrants are slithering into San Diego County like there's a Black Friday sale. Watch human smugglers here drop off macked out migrants. Look at these characters. Not a woman or child among them. Migrants from India, China, Turkey, trotting right around the wall that Biden stopped building. They get handed "Welcome to USA" flyers for breaking into our country that spells out the VIP perks they get under Biden. Ready? If you're a gay illegal, you will be given the option of going to a shelter where you will receive legal, medical, and onward travel assistance. Onward and upward. Adios, amigo. Now, if you're a Latin lesbian, bust into our country, Biden gives you free housing, free lawyers, free doctors, and free tickets to travel anywhere in Los Estados Unidos. And that's not all the perks for gay illegals. Free food and drink, free Wi-Fi, and a free assistant like Johnny, who will help you find your long-lost uncle or cousin. You just show up to the border, yo soy queer, and Venezuela scares me. Right this way, Juan. Make yourself comfortable in our lounge, or your connecting flight's on us. May we start you with a beverage? And if Juan feels he's trapped in Juanita's body, Gavin Newsom will give him a sex change on your dime. Fact check me. I dare you. This is all true. Free sex changes for illegals in California. We'll also pay for your college, too, where we'll teach you America isn't any better than Mongolia. No wonder the third world's showing up at the back door. They're coming in by the truckload.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little triggered by some of the language there. I don't think the use of backdoor was accidental. Also, I guarantee you that Yo Soy Queer is going to be the name of a gay bar in the Latin Quarter of your nearest downtown metropolis sometime soon. Let me get this straight now. If you're an illegal alien and you're gay, you get this, as he put it, buttload of benefits. But if you're straight, if you have normative opposite sex attraction, you get the bare minimum. If this isn't a recruitment program to boost up the gay population in America, I've never seen it. Imagine you're crossing the border. You just had to deal with thousands of miles of wilderness and the coyotes and nothing but the things you've got in your backpack that you packed, including the drug that you're trafficking over because you're a mule for the drug cartels. And then you're told, listen, if you're gay, you can get all this stuff over here, all the stuff behind door number 3, but all you got to be is gay. I mean, oh, yeah, I'm gay. You betcha I'm gay. I've been gay. I'm gayer than anyone. Put RuPaul to shame. I wish all of that was made up, but it's not. It's 100% true. You want to know how ridiculous the politicians who are promoting programs like that are? You know, Democrats, the people in Joe Biden's party. Look at this Democrat from California making a big case about what Donald Trump would do if he were president, how he would protect the border.
I want to remind the public that Donald Trump and House Republicans also have their own ideas for the border. So let's review the majority's border ideas that they've actually presented. Here they are. Donald Trump actually has said that he wants to build alligator moats along the border. That's one of his incredible ideas. Another idea that Donald Trump has promoted is he actually wants to electrify the border fence and maybe even put some spikes on the border. That's another Donald Trump and MAGA majority border idea. Another idea, which I'm not sure how well it would go, is he wants to actually bomb northern Mexico with missiles. That's another Trump idea. And finally, I think one of the ones that I think is the most grotesque is suggestions that instead we should maybe just shoot migrants in the legs as they cross the border. So once again, the Donald Trump and MAGA plan is alligator moats, bombing northern Mexico, shooting migrants in the legs, and electrifying the fence and putting spikes on them. That is the Donald Trump border plan.
Do you promise? I mean, are you telling me that if Donald Trump becomes president, we're going to have that kind of action on the border? Because sign me up. I mean, do you think Trump could just take that 1 minute that you just saw and turn it into an ad? Obviously, I'm kidding. And I'm guessing that Trump, when he may have floated some of those ideas, may have been kidding as well. Probably serious about the alligators. But you know what's interesting about each and every one of those seemingly outlandish ideas to protect the border? They all have one thing in common. They would stop people from crossing the border. And on the other hand of the equation, we actually have, a wide open door. We need more money for more Border Patrol agents to handle the people faster that are crossing the border so we can get them in faster. That's the Biden plan. So I don't know. I mean, I've been watching Donald Trump for a while. He comes from the world of business. Maybe knowing that he's entering into a negotiation over the border, maybe he's coming from that extreme, because the other extreme, the status quo right now, is no border protection at all. And maybe we'll settle somewhere in the middle, which would be, I don't know, a barrier of sorts, perhaps a wall, and enforcement of our actual border security laws as they're written, which would also have the effect of keeping people out. I love it when a Democrat congressman trying to mock crazy MAGA extremist Republicans actually exposes the fact that he finds it outlandish that a politician would actually want to do their job and protect the border. But, thanks for revealing that to us. Meanwhile, Biden has a very different message that he's sending here. For years now, he's been saying that the border is secure. His Secretary of Homeland Security has said the border is secure. His vice president has said the border is secure. And now he's demanding action so he can secure the border. Watch this.
With executive authority, or is there more you could do? Absent
Not all I can do. Just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the borders patrol. Give me the people. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work for us.
Give me the power is always a great thing to see a president yelling at the top of his lungs. Give me the power. This man is terrifying. And of course, what you just saw is a complete and total lie. I'm waiting for the fact checkers over at PolitiFact, Snopes, that dweeb on CNN with the 12-year-old haircut and the glasses. Is it Dick Dale? Don Dale?
Daniel Dale.
Daniel Dale. Love that alliteration. It sounds like somebody that got, beat up in Smallville when Clark Kent was going to high school. Anyway, I'm waiting for all those fact checks because every single thing that this man just said is completely false. He reversed over 60 executive actions when he came into office that Donald Trump had put in that had, in fact, secured the border, from the Remain in Mexico to the emergency shutdown of the border. By the way, I can prove to you that Joe Biden and this administration can exercise emergency authority to shut down the border. Are you ready? I'm about to prove it to you. Do you remember a couple of months ago when those Canadians were trying to get to a Kiss concert in Buffalo, and they may have had one or two Labatts, maybe a moose head? And as they were plowing toward the border crossing there at Niagara Falls, they flipped their car and it exploded. You remember that story? And at the beginning, people thought that there was a bomb, that it was a terrorist attack. So what did they do? They shut down the border. They declared an emergency, and they shut down the border, and they wouldn't let any more Canadians cross into America. They just exercised that power. He's got the power. He doesn't need anything coming out of Congress. You know that. You're smart enough to know it, but it's good to remind you every single day. You know who else knows that the president doesn't need any more power? Chip Roy, congressman from Texas. He was conducting some questioning yesterday with some experts on border protection, and the question of whether what we're seeing right now on our southern border is an invasion came up. Is it an invasion? Let's have that conversation.
Mr. Brnovich, question. 3,000 Americans were killed. People are trying to say that there's a specific invasion that we haven't been invaded since 1814. Do you think the families of the 3,000 who were killed would suggest that what happened on September 11th, the product of overstayed visas and a bad system that we have here in terms of protecting against unwanted attacks, that is an invasion from the standpoint of any logical conclusion of an American who's concerned about their safety and well-being?
September 11th was an invasion and an attack on the
Mr.
United
Hayek,
States
would you
of
think so?
I would think they would not be comforted.
Right. Mr. Webster?
It was an invasion.
Right. Now, Mr. Jabwat, yes or no?
I wouldn't purport to speak for the families of people who were killed.
Right. Do you think as an American,
Just real fast here, we've got 4 witnesses. Can you guess which one is the Democrat based on that first round of answers? Yeah, you guessed it. This guy.
was an invasion to have people come in and bomb buildings, fly planes into buildings and kill 3,000 people?
You know, within the meaning of that clause of the Constitution.
People who overstayed visas.
Within the meaning of that clause of the Constitution, because I agree with everybody here. It was an attack. I was blocks away when it
so
happened.
is that a yes or no? No. I mean, you're saying no then.
Not with it. I don't think so.
Right.
Not within.
So for the average American watching this, and they're saying, okay, that is how we have to live in the modern world. Say that, okay, unless the redcoats are marching right in, you know, coming right up in through New York, coming up the river and saying, okay, we're here, right? Or unless there's a army with, you know, coming across the Rio Grande, that's the invasion. But when 3,000 Americans are dead because we were attacked by people who overstayed their visas because we have a very broken immigration system, or we now have people who are going around the country that just end up in Minnesota, who've been here for a year, that are clearly affiliated with terrorist organizations, that somehow we don't have to be concerned about whether or not that's an invasion, right? Do you believe that President Biden is responsible for the crisis at the southern border? Yes or no? Mr. Brnovich?
Absolutely.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Webster?
Yes.
Mr. Jabwat?
No,
President Biden responsible for the crisis at the southern border?
President Biden is responsible for the policies of his administration.
So is he responsible for the present crisis at the southern border?
And to the extent that his administration,
Is that a yes or no?
would you let me finish?
I mean, is yes or no? Is he responsible for the crisis at the southern border?
He's
He and-
responsible for the policies of his administration and their effects at the
Well, I'll take that as a yes then. Is the Biden administration responsible for the border crisis the country is facing? That, I think, was a yes. Do you believe that what is currently happening on the southern border constitutes an invasion as we understand it in the Constitution and is applied in today's world where we're dealing with the forces that we're dealing with around the world, with forces who want to endanger the American people? Mr. Brnovich, yes or no? Is what is currently happening on the southern border an invasion?
As our first in the nation opinion expresses, this does constitute an invasion pursuant to the U.S. Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Brnovich. Mr. Hayek?
Yes, because the cartels are committing hostile encroachment onto Texas, and that constitutes an invasion.
Thank you, Mr. Hayek. Mr. Webster?
Yes, absolutely.
And you and Mr. Jabwat, I
No.
think we know the answer.
No.
You believe it's no.
Not within the meaning of that
And so
clause of the Constitution.
here's a question. Do you
All right, so let me just jump in here real fast. Why is this important, Larry? Why are they going through all of this semantic conversation about what's an invasion? Let me turn you, if I may, to a little document we like to call the Constitution. Article 4, Section 1 is the full faith and credit law, and it says that each state and public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every state, Congress may be general laws prescribe the manner in which blah, blah, blah. You know, if you learned anything in your civics class or even you took some law degrees, you know what the full faith and credit clause is. But here's what's important. When you scroll down to Section 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. You see, it's the federal government's job. It's the President of the United States' job as the chief executive and the person who runs the executive branch of government. It's the compact, it's the promise that was made between the federal government and each and every one of the 50 states that they would be protected from an invasion. And if what is going on in Mexico right now, excuse me, in Texas, easy Freudian slip to make, if what's going on in Texas right now is in fact an invasion, and the federal government has done and refuses to do anything about it, in fact, they are now threatening to go down there and remove the state of Texas's border protections and actually make it easier for people to come into that state, then in fact, they are derelict in their duty and they are neglecting their primary responsibility per the Constitution. You see that, right? You see it right in front of you. In fact, there's another clause in the Constitution that allows for the states to protect themselves if the federal government doesn't, which is exactly what we see from Texas and the other 25 governors who have stood in solidarity with Texas. So this question as to whether, objectively speaking, the state of Texas is being invaded right now is incredibly important as this thing plays out before our eyes. Let's get back to Chip Roy now.
You believe that states like Texas or Arizona or any other state has a right to defend their citizens and take action to secure the border, particularly in the complete and abject failure of the federal government to do so, as the Constitution contemplated, notwithstanding the views expressed by some on both sides of the aisle. To the contrary, yes or no, do the citizens of those states have the right to defend their citizens and take action to secure their border? Mr. Brnovich.
The governor does indeed have the ability to call out the National Guard or use state resources to protect the citizens of their state.
Mr. Hayek.
Yes, it's clear that right is clearly stated in the Constitution.
Mr. Webster.
Yes, for Texas.
Mr. Jawad.
Again, 150 years of Supreme Court precedent says that states do not have the authority to take immigration matters into their own hands. And
Pretty sneaky little liberal. Did you see what he did there? The question is not about immigration. It's about border security and invasion. You see what he did? They do this every time. You start challenging them on border security and they say, hey, this is an immigration issue. No. An invasion is not immigration. In fact, this is the opposite of immigration. Immigration, we have a process for immigration. You want to immigrate to the country? In your home country, you go to the U.S. Embassy there, you apply for immigration, you go through the process. That's immigration. What we're seeing right now is not immigration. I want you to see this again real fast so you can see how slippery this move is.
Stated in the Constitution.
Mr. Webster.
Yes, for Texas.
Mr. Jawad.
again, 150 years of Supreme Court precedent says that states do not have the authority to take immigration matters into their own hands. And
Was
no
Dred Scott a good opinion?
governor has the right.
Was Dred Scott a good opinion that we should follow?
We're not talking about Dred Scott here. We're
Do
talking
we,
about
next
150
question.
yards.
Do we have, right. What, but,
And no
but it does
governor,
matter.
no governor has the authority to override that Supreme Court
But that wasn't the
precedent
question.
or
That wasn't the question. Mr.
Constitution
Jawad, with all due
by
respect, that wasn't the
claiming that an
question.
invasion
Your
is
time
taking
is up. You've answered the question. We know where you stand. Do we have operational control of our southern border as defined by the Secure Fence Act of 2006, which states operational control means the prevention of all unlawful entries in the United States, includes entries by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband? Yes or no? And then I'll finish my questions.
No.
Do not.
Mr. Jawad.
No, and we never have, and we never will by that definition.
Well, at least that's consistent with Secretary Mayorkas, who told me under oath in this room that he did have operational control.
That's correct, which is exactly why Secretary Mayorkas is facing impeachment right now. That was a critical answer right there, where the Democrats' own witness threw Mayorkas under the bus and called him the perjurer that he is. But let's just be clear here as this discussion continues to play itself out, as the federal government is attempting to go in and remove the barriers, the razor wire that Texas has put in, and we have the stand down. If, in fact, any reasonable American, even if you wear a black robe and you sit behind a federal bench, can come to the conclusion that what we're seeing right now on the southern border is not an immigration process, but it is a violation of America's sovereign borders, and is, in fact, an invasion, then it is the federal government's responsibility and obligation to do something about it, which they won't do. And if you're wondering, we've gone ahead and Googled it for you. The definition of invasion. The first definition is an instance of invading a country or region with an armed force. And well, I mean, that is kind of the traditional definition of invasion. But let's face it, if you're country A and you want to invade country B, and you know country B isn't going to put up a fence or use any kind of defensive capabilities to keep you from invading that country, then why would you use an armed force? I mean, that's a lot of wasted time. And Those guns and stuff, that's a lot heavier to carry, right? You don't need a tank if you're not going to be stopped. So let's move on to definition number 2. An incursion by a large number of people or things into a place or sphere of activity. And the third one, an unwelcome intrusion into another's domain. By 2 out of 3 definitions, what we're seeing on the southern border is an invasion. Yesterday in a federal court, 6 activists were convicted for an unlawful protest. And I want to show you video of that protest. I want to give you a warning, though. This might be disturbing for some viewers. Here's the activity that got these 6 radicals arrested in the first place.
You know what I heard?
I heard an old story. Our Savior came from glory. How he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me.
Yeah, it's chilling, disturbing stuff. I'm sorry that you had to see that. It's okay. You can let the kids back into the room now. Those are pro-life activists. They're singing hymns. I saw one praying a rosary, and I'm really scared of the one in the wheelchair there. They're sitting in a hallway outside of an abortion mill, a Planned Parenthood clinic. And they're praying. They're praying for the pregnant women who are in crisis and terrified for their future. They're praying for the unborn children who are about to meet a horrific fate. They were exercising their First Amendment right to practice their faith openly in the public square. While we still have that right, we should probably celebrate it. And the Biden administration, through the Justice Department, sent the FBI to their homes. This is what it looked like when one of those protesters was arrested.
But if you're not going to let me, then I'll just...
No, I want to know why you were banging on my door with a gun.
Hey, let's go back to that.
You're not going to tell me anything?
No, they're not.
I tried.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
You did not try. This is not acceptable. Can I have your name? You're not going to give me your name. You're not going to give me any information.
And off they go. Did you notice how they had one person in back with their automatic weapon just in case that woman made a run for it? They came back, of course, with their arrest warrant, and they arrested that person along with 5 others. And they were convicted. They were convicted for violating a thing called the FACE Act. Now, the FACE Act is a federal law that was put in place in the 90s after 1 or 2 abortionists were actually targeted for violence by some radical pro-life activists. By the way, I wouldn't even call them pro-life activists because by definition, if you're pro-life, you're not murdering people. And in fact, the Catholic Church and the pro-life community roundly completely, unambiguously condemned the acts of violence against the abortion doctors. But this was the Clinton 90s, and everyone had to make hay about protecting the right to abortion. So they passed this law that made it a federal crime for conducting any kind of intimidating act in front of an abortion mill, even if you're just protesting. And let me remind you what yesterday a federal court under the direction of Joe Biden determined was an intimidating act. That's what an intimidating act looks like, worthy of 11 years in prison. That's what they're facing. And I suppose if you're pregnant and planning on getting an abortion, it is intimidating to walk through a bunch of people who are acting pretty holy and praying for the life of that baby and praying for your salvation against all odds. I guess that can be intimidating. But it wasn't until the last year and a half that Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, and the United States Department of Justice decided to twist the meaning of the FACE Act, warp it beyond recognition, and apply it to convict individuals like this. Oh, by the way, the tactics used here were right out of Elliot Ness going after Al Capone. They got one of those protesters alone under questioning and convinced her to turn state's witness. They flipped her because they intimidated her. They scared her. They bullied her. They threatened her. And I guess understandably, she said, fine, just tell me whatever it is you want me to say. And they used her testimony to convict the others. Something in a book I read once about bearing false witness, but I don't want to cloud the issue now. That's the America we're living in right now under Joe Biden, who, by the way, I really do have to pause for a moment and remind everybody it's obligatory. He is a very serious and practicing devout Catholic. That Joe Biden is. Oh, you better believe he is. He'll tell you any opportunity he has. And, you know, you can always tell the really serious devout Catholics by how many times they tell you they're serious devout Catholics. What was it that Jesus said? Judge them by the things they tell you and not by their fruits. Oh, no, wait. It's the other way around. This is what's happening under Joe Biden's Justice Department with Merrick Garland in charge and Christopher Wray in the FBI. This is the kind of bullying tactics, arrests, and convictions that we are facing right now. And while they're doing that to these people, let's remind you what they're not doing. Let's remind you who they're not arresting. It is a federal law right now to protest in front of the home of a Supreme Court justice. That is the federal law. These are protesters in front of the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh in Maryland. They are screaming, oftentimes screaming obscenities, beating drums, threatening. In fact, one person who was joining this mob was literally arrested for hatching a plot to kidnap the justice and his little daughters and potentially kill them. Not one of these people have been arrested for protesting in front of a Supreme Court justice homes. And they do this in front of Clarence Thomas' home, in front of Justice Alito's home, Justice Barrett's home. It's still going on a year and a half after the Dobbs decision. None of them have been arrested, let alone an FBI team with guns ablazing plowing into your house, pulling you out in the middle of the night, and then convicting you, facing 11 years in prison. No, none of that has happened. You know who else has gotten off scot-free? One of the multiple acts of vandalism against pregnancy crisis centers that we've seen. Here's just one snippet.
This is what the inside of Compass Care Crisis Pregnancy Center looks like after someone set fire to it early Tuesday morning.
These people came in the dark of night, broke glass, set fires.
The FBI and Amherst Police Department are investigating the crime as a suspected arson. They say it happened around 3 a.m. Tuesday. Jane was here was spray painted on the side of the building, which Hardin says is a calling card for pro-abortion group Jane's Revenge, though police have not yet named a suspect or made an arrest.
And maybe we'll never know what the real motive was either. It's not an arson, it's a hate crime. It's terrorism. But they haven't been arrested, have they? Jane's Revenge, where are they? No one knows. The FBI doesn't care because Joe Biden's in charge. Over a Catholic vote, they're actually keeping track of all of the acts of violence against churches and pregnancy crisis centers since the Dobbs decision came down. Over 350 attacks since May of 2020. 392 against Catholic churches. 227 since the leak of the decision. And there have been 3 so far just this year. How many arrests? How many convictions? What's the priority of this Justice Department and this FBI? Well, we saw the priority. You burn a church down, you vandalize a pregnancy crisis center, we'll get to it someday. But if you sit outside an abortion mill and you pray the rosary and you sing a song, we're going to come and find you. We're going to get you. We're going to throw you behind bars. You know, we're basically down to a choice of 2 candidates for president. And it couldn't be clearer, right? You got Trump and you got Biden. And listen, I do understand people who are hesitant to vote for Donald Trump because of, you know, the temperament and some of the things he says, the way he says them. It might not be exactly what you expect from a president. I get that. I do. But if you care about this issue, if you call yourself pro-life, and you think that this is over because of the Dobbs decision, and you think that there's no difference really between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I get it. You don't like the tweets. Guess what? Grow up. Just a few moments ago in the United States Senate, Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri, reduced Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, to a quivering, stammering pile of jello. And it was an amazing thing to see. I've been watching congressional hearings for decades now. And I got to tell you, I've never seen what you're about to see right now. You're going to see the whole thing here. And this is, honestly, it's historic. Take a watch.
Let me start with you. Did I hear you say in your opening statement that there's no link between mental health and social media use?
Senator, what I said is I think it's important to look at the science. I know it's people widely talk about this as if that is something that's already been proven. And I think that the bulk of the scientific evidence does not support that.
Well, really, let me just remind you of some of the science from your own company. Instagram studied the effect of your platform on teenagers. Let me just read you some quotes from the Wall Street Journal's report on this. Company researchers found that Instagram is harmful for a sizable percentage of teenagers, most notably teenage girls. Here's a quote from your own study. Quote, "We make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls." Here's another quote. "Teens blamed Instagram," this is your study, "for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression. This reaction was unprompted and consistent across all groups." That's your study.
Senator, we try to understand the feedback and how people feel about the services. We can.
Yeah, and here comes the stammering and the stuttering. The brilliance of that move right there, because, you know, the science, they're going to start debating the science. And what does Josh Hawley do? What does he pull out of his back pocket? Mark Zuckerberg's study, not something from some college or university. No, their own research that Instagram did on themselves. And now Zuckerberg has to answer for it. And, well, he can't. And that's what's so beautiful. But I got to tell you, Hawley's just getting started. The buildup to the climax of this interrogation, this testimony, is amazing to watch, and how dramatic it is. Let's get back to it.
Wait a minute. Your own study says that you make life worse for 1 in 3 teenage girls. You increase
Senator,
anxiety and depression. That's what it says. And you're here testifying to us in public that there's no link. You've been doing this for years. For years, you've been coming in public and testifying under oath that there's absolutely no link. Your product is wonderful. The science is nascent, full speed ahead, while internally, you know full well your product is a disaster for teenagers.
Senator,
and yet
that's
you
not
keep
true.
right on doing what you're doing. right?
That's not true. That's not true.
Let me show you some other
But I mean,
facts
you-
I
you
know
can-
that you're
you can
familiar
cherry-
with.
you can
Well,
cherry-pick
wait
data
a minute,
points
wait a
if
minute,
you
wait a
want,
minute.
but
That's
I
not a
mean,
question.
that's
That's
not
not a
what the
question.
internal-
Those are facts, Mr. Zuckerberg. That's not a question.
Those aren't facts.
Here, let me show you some more facts. Here's some information from a whistleblower who came before the Senate and testified under oath in public. He worked for you. It's a senior executive. Here's what he showed he found when he studied your products. So, for example, this is girls between the ages of 13 and 15 years old. 37% of them reported that they had been exposed to nudity on the platform unwanted in the last 7 days. 24% said that they had experienced unwanted sexual advances they'd been propositioned in the last 7 days. 17% said they had encountered self-harm content pushed at them in the last 7 days. Now, I know you're familiar with these stats because he sent you an email where he lined it all out. I mean, we've got a copy of it right here. My question is, who did you fire for this? Who got fired because of that?
Senator, we study all of this because it's important and we want to improve our services.
Well, you just told
And
me
I
a
think
second
that
ago
the-
you studied it, but that there was no linkage. Who did you
Senator,
fire?
Yeah, I said you mischaracterized. the data.
37% of teenage girls between 13 and 15 were exposed to unwanted nudity in a week on Instagram. You knew about it. Who did you fire?
Senator, this is why we're building all.
Who
these
did you
different
fire?
Tools. Senator, I don't think that's.
Who did you fire?
I'm not going to answer that. That's
Because you didn't fire anybody, right? You didn't take any significant
I don't think
action.
it's appropriate to talk about like
It's not
individual HR
appropriate.
decisions.
Do you know who's sitting behind you? You've got families from across the nation whose children are either severely harmed or gone, and you don't think it's appropriate to talk about steps that you took? The fact that you didn't fire a
I'm
single
happy
person?
to-
Let me
happy
ask
to
you
talk
this. Let me
about
ask you
steps
this.
that we took.
Have you
If you'd like me to
compensated
speak.
any of the victims?
Sorry,
Have you compensated any of the victims?
I-
These
I-
girls, have you compensated them?
I don't believe so.
Why not? Don't you think they deserve some compensation for what your platform has done? Help with
Senator-
counseling services, help with dealing with the issues that your services cause?
Our job is to make sure that we build tools to help keep people safe.
Are you
across
going
our
to
platform.
compensate them?
Senator, our job and what we take seriously is making sure that we build industry-leading tools to find harmful
To make
content,
money.
take it off the services,
To make money.
and to build tools that empower parents.
So you
that
didn't
help more
take any
people.
action. You didn't
That's
take
not
any
true,
action. You
Senator.
didn't fire anybody. You haven't
not true.
compensated a
That's
single
not-
victim.
that's
Let
not
me
what I
ask you
said.
this. Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now?
Well,
They're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
Look at this scene. Look at this moment where one of the most powerful people in the world was boxed so into a corner of shame and incompetence that he had no choice but to rise to his feet, turn around, and address. Look at the parents. Address these parents and family members who are now standing up, the ones in black, wearing the ribbons, the white ribbons, on behalf of their children who were abducted, who were molested, in some cases who were murdered. So much here to finish this up with, other than let's start with applause for the people of Missouri for sending Josh Hawley to the Senate. Hey, have you noticed, the real smart set, the intellectuals, a lot of the never Trumpers in Washington, D.C., there's a couple of members of Congress and people in the Senate who they're just not our kind of people, right? You know what I'm talking about. You see these intellectual nimrods from the right, even conservatives. They call themselves Republicans, and they're above all of the tawdriness that people like Josh Hawley or Ted Cruz bring to the table. Oh, they're just not our kind of Republicans. Good, because the people, the senators, that they all poo-poo and degrade and mock and make fun of. Have you ever noticed that they're the ones who actually do something in these hearings? That actually bring issues up that you care about and actually hold these people's feet to the fire like you just saw? That was brilliantly done. On that final point about whether Mark Zuckerberg will actually create a victims fund with his own money, and of course he won't, and you saw that he won't. It's funny, though, in the last election cycle in 2020, he sure used a lot of his money to make sure that mail-in ballots were deposited in drop boxes and collected in certain neighborhoods, in certain districts, in certain counties, in certain states that really made a difference in the final vote count. There he was fine. He didn't hesitate to use money for that kind of stuff. They called him Zuck Bucks. Remember? And finally, we can tell that nobody really got fired over there at Facebook and Instagram for putting your daughter into harm's way, for psychologically damaging an entire generation of young women, even though they knew that it was happening. No, nobody got fired. But I'll tell you, somebody who will get fired at Facebook today, the person responsible for preparing Mark Zuckerberg for today's hearing. One last thing. If you're watching this on Facebook, do me a favor, share the hell out of this, like it, add comments to it, build it up so it automatically gets promoted, because I really want Facebook to have to deal with this. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and share the link on your Facebook. Let's just flood the zone. Thanks for playing, Mark. We love Megyn Kelly over here. Love her show. Love her approach. I really do love the honesty, by the way. There's something about this medium, when you're not in a TV studio and don't have all the, corporate stuff going on. I get it. You just feel like you can just be honest and reveal whatever it is going on. And well, a little while ago, she revealed something very personal, that when she got her third booster shot, the Moderna booster shot, it had an effect on her health. And now it turns out that the bigwigs over at Moderna, the big pharma people, they weren't very happy about that. And well, here's the great thing about Megyn Kelly. She revealed that too on her show yesterday.
On the subject of misinformation and platforms silencing people, it comes out that thanks to Li Fang, who did an investigation, and he has revealed that Moderna was very, very upset, among other things, about the fact that I said on this show that after I had gotten my third COVID shot, my booster, which you needed in order to operate in New York to do anything, I developed a positive on an autoimmune test that my general practitioner gave me. And then I had to go to a rheumatologist and all this stuff. I revealed it on the show. And I got targeted by Moderna, who was very worried that this would add to the growing concern around autoimmune disorders following COVID-19 vaccinations. That's your problem. Yes, it should add to that, Moderna. And apparently they attached internally a National Institutes of Health report highlighting a link between the COVID vaccines and autoimmune issues. So they're admitting internally that it's a problem, but they're upset that I am talking about it, and Alex Berenson and Russell Brand and Michael Schellenberger and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya are talking about it, Glenn, because they don't want it discussed. And the mainstream media outlets were only too happy to comply.
Yeah, I mean, it's, Li Fang is, I think, one of the best journalists in the country. He's a friend of mine, but he's my former colleague at The Intercept. That's somebody I worked hard to recruit there because he does exactly the kind of journalism that we were just saying earlier, way too much of the press doesn't do. And of course, he ended up having to leave The Intercept, and now he writes at Substack, which is generally what happens to people who want to do real journalism and find they can't. And this is a perfect example of the kind of story that people ought to know, which is that you have these gigantic corporations, extreme amounts of financial power. They had, in this case, a serious interest in constraining and restricting the range of debate that could be expressed. And they succeeded for a long time. They had Dr. Fauci pressuring a lot of the world's immunologists to change their minds in what they originally said, that this was almost certainly a lab leak, and got them to sign on to a letter in the Lancet saying this is a crazy conspiracy theory, and anyone who suggests it should be banished. And then obviously questions about the vaccine, its efficacy and its safety were something that was all but banished from mainstream media. People got banned from YouTube, from Facebook for saying it. Yeah. And this is evidence that the whole time Moderna was playing a huge role in surveilling people questioning their product,
without caring whether there was truth to it. They just didn't like it. Well, that's what's led in part to the power and strength of outlets like ours.
True. A great point, actually. And the most important point is that as long as other outlets are trying to silence people and silence the truth, and you don't get the truth, and you can tell you're smart, you know what's right or not, when you see things that are reported back to you that don't mesh with your own personal life and your own personal experience, you're like, well, that can't be true. And usually you're right. When you see that kind of reporting going on, you know you're being lied to. You don't just stick around and continue to be lied to. You go elsewhere. It's a great point that Megyn Kelly made there. But let's unpack this a little bit because it's important to recognize exactly what apparently Moderna did here. The internal memo raising concerns about Megyn Kelly telling the truth, telling her story, telling her actual real-life experience with an autoimmune scare due to the third booster shot from Moderna, according to Megyn Kelly. They raised the red flags and raised concerns about it, not based on, they didn't say, hey, we should probably do some more experiments, more studies, and put out some more precautions about this because maybe this is harming people. No, that wasn't their concern. They started circulating internal memos about how this is going to make them look bad and keep people from getting more shots because the more shots people get, the more money they make. And then the best part of it is that they added a link to a study at the National Institute of Health saying that there's probably a connection here in some cases between autoimmune concerns and the vaccine. They know the truth. Their concern is that this is going to make them look bad because people might be discovering the truth. Now, listen, my own personal story, I got the first 2 shots. I did not have to get the booster because where I live, it wasn't a requisite like it was in New York. Thank God. And I didn't have any adverse health effects. Okay. But I'm not going to sit up there and then demand that everybody get the shot because it's perfectly safe because everybody's different. And everyone needs to make their own health decisions. But for Moderna to then put pressure, as Glenn Greenwald just laid out there, put pressure on media outlets and put pressure through the government on streaming outlets to silence voices that are really just sitting up and saying, hey, this is a thing that happened to me. Well, you can't tell that story. It might make people think things. I mean, that's literally what they did. We're afraid of what people might think by hearing you tell the truth. In fact, depending on the headline that we write for this video and the thumbnail, there's probably a little notice right down below me right now. A little reader's context, right? The COVID-19 shot is completely safe and da-da-da-da, right? You've seen these before. It happens almost every time we do a quick segment like this. Listen, YouTube can do whatever they want or whatever platform we're on. They can do that. Sure, we know the rules and we'll play by those rules if we want to stay here. And if we don't, we'll go somewhere else. But my God, whatever this is that we're experiencing right now, whatever it is that Megyn Kelly, who did say that on YouTube, by the way, as well, whatever she's experiencing as well in having to communicate these ideas, I don't know what it is, but it sure ain't the free speech First Amendment utopia we were promised. We've been engaged in this debate over protecting women, girls, young girls, our daughters in their private spaces like girls' restrooms, girls' locker rooms, changing rooms, and things like that. Protecting those private spaces, their dignity, their privacy from transgender individuals who are biologically intact males. We have a quaint notion here. We think that women, especially young girls, especially minors, they should be able to pick and choose the time and place where they see a naked man in front of them. And for that matter, when another person, a stranger, gets to see them changing their clothes and be naked, they should have the right to do that. I know it's old-fashioned, but that's where we are. And the testimony you're about to see will, if you agree with us, that is, will absolutely send a chill up your spine.
And I developed breasts during puberty. So I'm a cisgender woman going through menopause. So I'm losing some of that strength. So I'm generally in opposition to laws that uphold the extermination of minorities. And this HB 1205 is a bite into the pursuit of happiness of trans kids. Next to come will be another crunch into the liberty of trans kids and adults. And the main course or the final solution, and yes, I intentionally capitalize final solution is a drooling, snarling chomp that ends the lives of all trans people in this state and the nation.
The law that she is likening to Hitler's Holocaust of 6 million Jews during World War II is a law that would protect young girls' spaces from transgender individuals. It would allow for girls to be able to be in a private space with only other biological girls. It allows a girl, a little girl, to not be exposed to male genitalia. And you need to be a radical psychopath to connect the dots from that notion to Hitler. But you just saw it done with great ease and aplomb, I must say, and a hell of a hairdo.
People who can sit and listen to the testimony of actual trans people and stand on the side of this bill, I really question their taste in judgment. Ohio and other states mentioned, the 24 that have passed these bills, they follow them up. Moving on to access to health care for kids. Moving on to access for health care for adults.
Let's just define our terms here. When someone like this says access to health care, it means children chemically castrating themselves by blocking their puberty through pharmaceuticals and eventually actually physically mutilating their perfectly healthy sexual parts for the idea of changing their gender, which of course they can't do. That then they can never tell you exactly what they want to do surgically or medically, so they just wrap that all into a nice little basket called access to healthcare. That's what this person's referring to. Just wanted to make sure you knew.
Then they move on to bathroom use, public bathrooms, employment, and visibility in public. The safety issue here isn't largely that someone's cis daughter is going to lose out to a trans girl in sports. Statistically, the data isn't there, and I have that here. I'll give it to you so you can check it out. And it isn't that she's going to be ruined for life by seeing a trans girl's penis in the locker room. In fact, statistically, that won't be the first penis she sees. The safety issue is a straight and narrow path.
I can't go on after that one. So this person, is it a she? She presenting, I don't know, Thai, cisgender. She said something. I'm not sure. Let's say she. Making the claim here that statistically, your little girl is already going to see a penis. So what's the problem? Is it really a remarkable statement to make when I sit here and say that I think girls should be the ones that pick and choose when they see a naked man for the first time? Forget about the first time. Is it really bigoted to say, am I being compared to Hitler for saying that girls should be empowered to say when, why, and where they are exposed to a naked man? That's all we're saying, ma'am. Nice time, ma'am. By the way, the crux of this law that's being debated is really about protecting girls in sports. Has to do with, yes, fair competition. It also has to do with safety of the girls participating in sports. Let's give you an example here. This is from a women's rugby match where a transgender player is allowed to play. This is a biological man who now represents as a woman rugby player playing against a team of all biological women. Watch what happens.
Of course, the Orchids try scorer could have been a well-executed tackle. She's just gone too far up on that lift.
That's not really very gentlemanly behavior, is it? Can you imagine? Can you imagine being on the side of saying, yes, I think a man should be able to treat a woman like that? Grab her, lift her up high in the air, and then body slam her to the ground. And if you're not in favor of it, you're a bigot who's going to get children killed because they'll commit suicide because of you. God, I hate this topic so much. that we even have to defend normalcy. But I will say this. After watching that video, that rugby video, I will say this about our opponents on this ideological discussion. They are right about one thing. It's true. Somebody is going to get killed. Somebody's going to get killed playing one of these sports. And it's going to be a tragedy. An avoidable tragedy. So this prosecution of Donald Trump down in Fulton County, Georgia, has hit another wackadoodle turn on the yellow brick road toward injustice. Fani Willis, as you know, is the district attorney there, and she's got a political jihad against Donald Trump. She was going to get him in a courtroom, and she's going to somehow impanel a jury that's going to convict this guy. That's all she cares about. She doesn't care about the law. She doesn't care about jurisprudence. She doesn't care about, well, ethics, it appears, because you already know that she's been funneling taxpayer dollars to her boyfriend, who's been taking her on lavish trips. But now there's a new wrinkle in the scandal bust down there in Fulton County. This one, again, from the Washington Free Beacon, doing incredible investigative work, has undercover, secretly recorded audio from a whistleblower who got fired from Fani Willis. And, well, I think you're about to see why this person got fired.
If you had to give me a sentence, what is the sentence theme?
Once I told him about his, respectfully and in an email, about his lack of leadership and the fact that he wanted to do things with grants that were impossible. And I kept telling him, like, we can't do that, and questioning stuff. He would take me off projects, tell people I wasn't doing what I was supposed to because I questioned him. Because I understood, I helped write that grant. I knew what was in that grant. He told everybody in front of Crystal, Deontay, everybody, we're going to get MacBooks, we're going to do that, we're going to get swag, we're going to use it for travel. I said, you cannot do that.
This is Amanda Timpson. She is the whistleblower, and she says that she was mistreated and eventually fired from the Fani Willis office because she stood up when she saw that a campaign aide of Fani Willis was advocating for using funds in that office for, well, as you saw, swag and other personal items. And she said, no, you can't do that. That's a misuse of the grant funds that we've got. I believe it's a federal grant specifically that she's talking about. She's a whistleblower. She said to the district attorney, this is going on right now. I'm being punished because I've been telling them that they can't break the law. And eventually, Fani Willis fired her, actually had her escorted out of the building with 7 armed security guards, as if she were a criminal. This is all coming off in a wrongful termination lawsuit right now. And we'll continue now with this surreptitiously recorded conversation.
It's a very, very specific grant. Took me off. I questioned Junior DA. There's kids in there from out of the county, all this. Took me off Junior DA. I did not want to do it. He made it look as if I wasn't doing what I needed to do because I questioned him. Because I knew for a fact Mr. Cuffey respectfully did not know what he was doing, period.
So I respect that is your assessment. It was clear to me that you and Mr. Cuffey were not getting along. And I'm not saying that your assessment is wrong. I want you to really listen to the words I'm saying.
Cuffey, and this is my personal opinion, to one woman to another, is dangerous to your administration. He tells people, when I reached out to you, he told me, oh, you think your word is safe? And exactly when you reached out to Miss Willis, she called me and told me, she told me everything. So once you reach out to her, she's going to reach up back out to me. So I didn't even go to HR. And he put Dexter's name on my PDP, and I didn't even feel safe going to anybody.
Can I tell you something? I have 3 supervisors that have failed in this field. What's interesting to me, because I'm in a learning curve too, they each pretend to have a relationship with me that they do not have. I guess that's an intimidation tactic. I'm sorry that you felt that way, but you, Dexter, certainly don't have no relationship with Michael Cuffey. You were safe to go those places.
2 months later, the whistleblower was fired. And so now obvious questions about the conduct of that office and how you treat a whistleblower adds to the mess surrounding this out-of-control district attorney who really honestly campaigned on one issue. And, well, give her credit. I guess she's following through on that issue. She's going to get Donald Trump. And just as we talked about yesterday on the show with this whole defamation suit against E. Jean Carroll, justice doesn't really play a part here. Ethics doesn't really play a part. Precedence doesn't play a part. The use of our judicial system in a political process, that doesn't even enter into the equation. Fani Willis and the Democrats, emboldened by Joe Biden and his Justice Department, they care about one thing: the headline during an election year. Donald Trump guilty. That's it. That's all there is. But this story is not going to end well for Fani Willis. We pick it up. Andrew Carr's great reporting over here at the Free Beacon. Timpson, who joined the Fulton County District Attorney's Office as Director of Gang Prevention and Intervention in 2018, was hopeful that Willis would take the office in a new direction. In December 2020, Wilson named Timpson to her 2021 executive leadership team, a select group of employees tasked with playing a critical role in changing and rebranding the culture in the District Attorney's Office. Think about that for a minute. She was empowered to change the culture in the office. Here she is in that role saying, you've got a culture problem in this office. And she got fired. Timpson first got the sense that something was awry shortly after Willis assigned Cuffey to serve as Timpson's direct manager. Cuffey was somebody who worked on the campaign. By March 21, Timpson said Cuffey planned to use part of a $488,000 federal grant earmarked for the creation of a Center of Youth Empowerment and Gang Prevention to pay for swag, computers, and travel. Instead of heeding Timpson's warnings that his plan was illegal, Cuffey claimed the purchases were part of Willis's vision, and in 21, Cuffey removed Timpson from the gang prevention program. It's great reporting, again, by the investigative reporters over at Washington Free Beacon. Another hat tip to those guys. They're literally just across the street from our office right here. They do a great job. And this in and of itself, it's an important story, and hopefully it'll get further investigated. It should get a federal investigation, but that ain't going to happen. Not with this attorney general and not with this president. But stand alone, it's bad. Add it to the story we already have about the misuse of funds in this office for political and personal gain, and you see what an amateur might call a pattern of behavior. A pattern of behavior of corruption and political swampiness that apparently only the Democrats can really excel at. I don't want to freak you out, but there's just a little over 9 months until Election Day. I know, it's insane. We just finished the New Hampshire primaries. Next week, we've got the Nevada and Virgin Island caucuses for the Republicans, and then later in February, the South Carolina primary. And before you know it, we're going to have the conventions and the general election 9 months away. And it's time now to start really drilling down on some of the polls you might be seeing. Now, just so you know, we've got a rule over here on this program where we're going to spend most of our time looking at statewide polls, not national polls. Why? Well, because we're smart enough to know, and well, we respect your intelligence, and you're smart enough to know that national polls literally mean nothing. It's like saying, I won the popular vote. Hey, congratulations. You're still working at the Starbucks, dude, because you didn't win the election. You see, national polls reflect the popular vote, which is meaningless. That's not how we elect presidents. So why do we even look at national polls? It's insane. It's like determining the winner of a baseball game based on how many hits a team got. You can get a ton of hits, but if you're not scoring runs, you ain't going to win that game because that's how you keep score. Well, how do we keep score in presidential politics? State by state by state, leading up to that magical 270 electoral college votes for the presidency. So, state by state by state, how's it looking right now? Well, we've got a little bit of insight on what most people believe the swing states are. The swing states are those states that could go either way and tip the election. See, there are some states that are baked in the cake. Democrats have a built-in advantage because they get California right off the bat. Ton of electoral college votes in California. But of course, Republicans now have Texas and Florida. See, Florida used to be a swing state, but something changed there. I think it may have had something to do with Ron DeSantis and COVID. It's now a solid red state. So it almost offsets, actually, when you bring those two states into the equation. That's why Democrats have been so intent on trying to flip Texas. It might even have something to do with the changing face of the populace down there after 3 years of Joe Biden's border security strategy. But when you take those states that are already sort of baked in the cake for each party and then narrow it down to those swing states, you get a clearer picture of where this election is going to transpire and how it might go. Because it would take a lot of time for us to look at 50 individual polls. Instead, we're just going to look at 7 individual polls. We're going to look at Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, and Arizona. By the way, if you've been watching Electoral College politics for the last several years, you'll notice, yes, that Florida is not one of these states. Neither is Ohio. Ohio used to always be one of these states. Not anymore. Although, to offset that, Georgia, sadly, has now entered the mix. Although, is Georgia really a swing state? I know they went for Biden, allegedly, last time around. And I know that they've elected Democrat senators now the last couple of times. But Governor Kemp, the Republican, he's been able to master that state lately. And Stacey Abrams, what is she doing right now? Oh, that's right. Star Trek made her the president of the planet Earth. Wonder how much that pays. So let's look at these states. This is the latest poll from Bloomberg, actually. So this is not one of those, fly-by-night agencies, and it's somewhat fair. I mean, as fair as Bloomberg can be. I mean, me personally, I think that there's a silent Trump vote out there. People won't either pick up the phone or won't answer truthfully or will just keep it to themselves that they're voting for Trump because, let's face it, these days, culturally, there's real ramifications for actually openly saying, yeah, between Trump and Biden, you better believe I'm going to vote for Trump. That people aren't really willing to openly say that. So I would actually pad these numbers up a little bit for Donald Trump. But even still, take a look. Wisconsin, right now, Trump 49, Biden 44. That's +5 for Trump. Pennsylvania, Trump 48, Biden 45. That's +3 for Trump. Nevada, Trump 48, Biden 40. That's +8 for Trump. Georgia, Trump 49, Biden 41. That's +8 for Trump. Michigan, Trump 47, Biden 42. That's +5 for Trump. North Carolina, Trump 49, Biden 39. That's +10 for Trump. We might have to take North Carolina off the swing state list eventually. And then in Arizona, you've got Trump 47, Biden 44. That's +3 for Trump. Did you notice a pattern there? That's right. For the first time this election cycle, Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden in every single one of the swing states. By healthy margins, by the way. Every single one of the swing states. And by the way, this is after one of the most negative media news cycles that any public person, let alone a political candidate, has had to suffer. In the last 12 months, the negative press that Donald Trump has gotten from all of these bogus indictments and bogus investigations, the politically motivated jihad that has been run against him, and somehow not only does he emerge, but he's actually triumphantly emerged according to these polls. If the election were held today, the Electoral College map on election night would look like this. Soak that in for a minute. The number is 313 to 225. That's a wipeout. That is a devastation for Joe Biden. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people are thinking that Joe Biden might not actually eventually be the nominee for the Democrats come November. And if the polls continue to trend this way, that's really going to become a serious reality. But in the meantime, if you're Donald Trump and you spent most of your time, frankly, fending off the bad news cycle and the lawsuits, and you haven't really been campaigning much, today's a pretty good day. And if you're an American who's looking for a change in this country and a 180 turn from the international crises, the wars in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe, the crisis at our borders and the crime in our streets and the devastation in our education system and the incredible collapse of our economy from the housing market to interest rates to the employment question to inflation. If you're looking for a change, it's pretty good news for you too. That's all she wrote for today, but we'll be back tomorrow. You better believe it. You better be back too. We can't wait to see you. Thanks for watching. If you liked any of these segments, we put them all on our YouTube account. Go ahead and share them individually or the whole dang show. But share it, like it, and tell your friends. We love the audience that we're building here, and we appreciate your support. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.